Okay, so we are going to start chapter 15 today. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and grab your file from last time, and I'm going to go ahead and screen share. So you should right now be able to see my file that we used last time. So this will be our starting point for today. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and save it. I'm going to give it a new name, change it to chapter 15. And I've already got one that says that, but go ahead and you can do that if you'd like, or you can keep working it. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're not going to use, we're not going to worry about payback or for now the tax issues that we were talking about before. So I'm just going to clear that. And then I'm going to clear the taxes back to 0. And I think good, we're okay. So you should, your file should look like this right now. And if it doesn't, if you need help, I need you to go ahead and chat me. No, chapter 15 will not be on this exam. It will be on the final. Okay, everybody else, everybody with me? So it's relatively simple. Wait, what did you change about the sheet except changing the name? Okay, so what I changed was I'm setting taxes back to 0. Okay, and then down here we had done some calculations. So below net CF, we had done some calculations to look at payback period as well as calculating the book value. So I've deleted that stuff because we don't really need it for what I want to do next. So if you're with me, you ought to have a good check here would be, is your year 4 net cash flow 134,974? And if it's not, then you need to make a change. Most likely you need to delete the taxes and put it back to 0. And then the stuff we did down below net cash flow, you can just delete and clear out. All right, I'm not seeing anything else, so I'm going to assume everybody's with me. Like I did before, I will upload this file, 35,000 in net op income. All right, Emily, so where do you have 35,000?
I have it in my operating income and my net operating income.
For what year?
Year 1.
So instead of 47,000?
Yeah.
So can you see if any of the stuff above is same? Okay, so can you see if any of the stuff above doesn't match what I have?
Oh, my depreciation is 60,000.
Okay. Thank you. So I think we changed that. Okay, good. Thank you for making that point. Why is that? So it should be, depreciation should be, we're going to go back to straight line. So that should be negative this divided by useful life. And then, all right. There we go. Okay. Thank you. I missed that. I forgot that we had changed that from before. Okay, so, and because we added and subtracted depreciation, it should have been a wash, which is what it was. So that becomes relevant if we were working with taxes. Okay, so has everybody now got the same look? Anybody not have the same look? Let me put it that way. That's easier to ask. So depreciation, okay, so depreciation needs to be reset back to 60. Otherwise, and that really won't affect our work we're going to do today. Okay, nobody's coming online saying they're not in line. I'll just save that as is. Okay. So what we're going to do today, and what we'll do in chapter 15, is talk about project risk. So this is the kind of work you will be doing if you get into whether it's operations or finance. You wouldn't be doing this, say, in revenue cycle, but you'll be doing this if you get into some sort of project kind of work where you're making an evaluation of, should we do something for the organization that I work for, whether that's a clinic, a hospital, a public health agency, right? All organizations have to do these kind of capital investment questions, and so we're going to continue with the same stuff we were doing in chapter 14, which is why I'm going to continue to work with this same spreadsheet. We're going to still think about, we're going to focus on NPV for this chapter, and we're going to do a couple of techniques. The first technique is called sensitivity analysis, which I kind of talked to a little bit while we were working earlier. We're going to actually try to build we will build a sensitivity analysis model, and then we will do a scenario analysis. And I'll explain the difference. But the main, this is useful. These are useful techniques. You will actually, these are actual things that you will potentially do in the field. But probably even more importantly is really the Excel modeling that we are doing here. So what we did the other day, trying to build this model so that it pulls from over here on the left, and we built a model that is flexible, so that if we change any of these assumptions, right, it filters back into our outcomes. So I'm going to put that back. Right. So all our assumptions are over here, and when you build a model, if you can pull your assumptions out, that allows you to quickly change your assumptions in the model, and so that's what we're going to do. Is we're going to take advantage of the way we constructed this. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be some it's kind of impossible to eliminate the grunt work of cutting and pasting things, but we're going to do what you're going to see is we'll have saved a lot of time by having built our model in this fashion. Okay, so sensitivity analysis is the first thing we're going to do. And sensitivity analysis, what we're going to focus on is we're going to look at our model, and we're going to say, how sensitive is this model to any one particular assumption that we made over here on the left side? Okay, so how sensitive is our model to a change in volume? How sensitive is our model to a change in net revenue? Sensitivity analysis, you change one variable at a time. So you're not going to go and change, well, I'm going to change my assumption about my volume, and I'm going to change my assumption about my net revenue, and I'm going to change my assumption about my labor costs, right? You're not going to do that. You are going to you're going to hold everything else constant. So sensitivity analysis, how sensitive is your model to a change of one variable, holding all the other variables constant? So we're going to take advantage of the net present value. But we need to do one more thing here before we get going, and that is we're going to take advantage of the net present value formula that Excel provides us, so that we're not going to do the manual calculation. We're just going to take advantage of the net present value formula this time. So I've taught you how to do kind of the more manual approach of building all the assumptions and then discounting each flow and so forth. This time we're going to go ahead and we're just going to go ahead and take advantage of the net present value formula. So this case is going to be what we call our base case. Okay, so this case is kind of what we assume is the most likely scenario. Right? And that's going to play both in our sensitivity analysis as well as our scenario analysis. So we're assuming these are the most likely assumptions. Okay, so then we need to just ask ourselves, what is the NPV of this project if all of our assumptions come true. Okay. So remember, NPV is the present value of the future cash flows. So these are our cash flows, right? The net CF is the future cash flows, net of our investment. So we're going to get the present value of these cash flows, subtract our investment, and that will give us our NPV. And our rule is we want to have NPV greater than what? Good, good. You're on the ball. You're paying attention. All right. So we're going to use the NPV formula, and let me say one more time: the NPV formula does not actually give you the NPV. Okay, I don't know why they decided to name it the NPV or name the formula the NPV formula. It's not net present value because it's not net of anything. It is simply the present value of a annuity. But we're going to use that formula regardless of the fact that they've poorly named it. So the NPV formula is going to give us the present value of the 4 future cash flows. So the first argument we have to put in is the corporate cost of capital, which is going to be 10%. So we're going to tell it to, and we're always going to, if we can, code it in using our list of, right, code in entries using our list of assumptions over here, comma, and then to complete this formula, you need to give it the stream of cash flows. So that's these 4 cash flows. So if you're exactly lined up with me, it would be F14 colon I14. If you're not exactly lined up with me, you just want to pick the 4 future cash flows. And then you close the parentheses. So you should have something that looks like that right now. Equals NPV B7, which is our corporate cost of capital. That's our discount rate or our hurdle rate. And then these are our 4 cash flows that we're using. Now, we're not done, but I want to just take a look, right, and see what the outcome is. So the present value of the future cash flows is 339,682. If we just click over here to verify, yep, that's the same we came up with on this page, right? So I'm feeling good about that. I've double checked my work. Now remember that, that 339,682 is the future value, is the present value of the future cash flows. Jisoo, no, you don't need to lock the reference. That's okay. So remember, that is just the present value. So that's the first half of the net present value calculation. The other thing we need to do, right, is we need to subtract off or add. In this case, we can add the negative of the initial investment, which is the cell. It's going to make it difficult for me. The cell right above it. Well, it doesn't matter. I can add this. Right. So I have the first half of my argument, NPV B7 F14 to I14, is the present value of the future cash flows. I'm adding the equipment cost, and since it's already negative, I'm adding a negative is the same thing as subtracting the investment. And so now I have my NPV. Okay, 99,682. And we jump back over here to verify what we did the other day. Same thing, right? So I want you to be able to be comfortable doing this kind of layout. I will not require you to do that on the exam. If you're fine with doing this, right, using the formula, I'm fine with that. It's perfectly accurate, right? So, for chapter 14, you can use either, if I tell you, hey, I need you to get the IRR, you can use the IRR formula. You just need to remember how to use it right. You can use NPV formula. Just remember that it's not really NPV, it's the present value of the future present value of the future cash flows, and you have to still subtract off the investment. As long as you remember how to use those things, if you use them correctly, you're good to go. Okay. So now we have our base case, which is what we think is our most likely outcome. What we're going to do now is we're going to start to build a scenario analysis. So I'm going to go over here, and we will start by varying. We're going to make some assumptions about volume. So I'm going to put here let me just see how I wanted to do it with you. Sorry, give me 1 second. Let's just call that. So I'm moving off to the side. I'm moving off to the right. We'll just call this column change. Then we're going to have volume, Npv. Well, let me see. We'll call it volume. We'll just call it volume here. And we can type up here Npv. So what we're going to do is we're going to calculate changes in how changes in volume impact our net present value. Okay, so I'm going to do that off to the right. So what we're going to do is program in a minus 30% change, minus 0.3, a minus 20% change, a minus 10% change, the base, which we call it base, a plus 10% change, a plus 20% change, and a plus 30% change. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to calculate what the NPV would be for our base, which we just got, is equal to 99,682. So that one we have, right? So I'm just grabbing that from over here, and I'm saying, I'm telling Excel, okay, this one's going to equal E15, which is the outcome from our base case. All right, so you should have 99,682. And let's go ahead and format these into percentages. So all I did was I highlighted the relevant cells, and then I go up here. If you're on the Home tab, I just go up here and hit percent. And that just puts it into percent. Looks nice. All right, so now we're ready to rock. What I want to do is I'm going to go up here to A1 to volume, and I'm going to highlight down so that I cover over to the 4th year and then down below NPV. Okay, I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to copy it. So for me, I'm going to do Control-C. Okay, so you should have selected your everything to the left here. I'm going to scroll down, give myself a couple of blank rows, and I'm just going to paste it in. All right. So let's see, and just make sure we've got everything looks good. Yeah, everything's still relational. Let's see. B6. Oh yeah, no, that's okay. We're not going to mess with inflation, so that's going to be okay. Everything else, I think, is not hard-coded. So as long as we don't mess with inflation, our model is okay. Otherwise, we'll have to recode things. So we're good. Okay. So this is going to become. So up here is our base case, and we could even, let's insert a line. So I just go here. I click on the. If you're working in Excel, I click in on the row head, and then I just tell it insert. I don't need a second row. I'm just going to keep one. Okay, and I'm just going to call this our base case, right? And then down here, I'm going to do minus 0.3. All right. Now this is going to be volume. So I'm going to type equals times 1 plus negative 0.3. So you should have a formula that looks like that, where volume was. So before we had just 5,000. Now we have 5,000 times parentheses 1 plus, in this case, A18, which is my negative 0.3, which causes our volume to drop to 3,500. And it feeds into our, very neatly feeds into both our, it changes our revenues as well as our supplies, because those are our variable, those are both connected to volume, right? Supplies are a variable cost, revenue, since we're fee for service, is a variable. And what do we want? And everything feeds through, and because we're using the Npv formula, it automatically calculates our Npv again. So nice, neat little technique. So now we have the Npv for our first sensitivity test for minus 30%. So I'm just going to go back up over here. Whoop, a little too far. I'm going to go back up over here. I'm going to type next to the minus 30%. I'm going to type equals, and then I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to grab the Npv value. So now I have the Npv if our volume were to fall by, if our volume was to be under our expectation by 30%. So as you can see, we're going to lose 104,000. We're going to have a negative 104,000 Npv if we're wrong by 30%. Okay. So now we're going to go back, and I want to go ahead and copy, starting with the negative 0.3, do include that. I'm going to go down and highlight my entire model for my first minus 30% portion. I'm going to hit Control C, and I can give myself just an extra row and paste that in. All right. And so, so now I've got my base case, I've got my negative 0.3, and since I built this as a formula, all I have to do is change my assumption here from negative 0.3 to negative 0.2. And what I'm now getting is 80%, right, or minus 20% for my volume. And you can see, again, my Npv is already calculated for me. So I can go back up here, hit equals, go back down, grab my my negative 36,000. And so I'm starting to fill this in. Okay, so the rest of this is just kind of wash, rinse, repeat. Right, so I'm going to go grab this again, copy, paste, replace the -2 with negative 1.1, right? And I'm just going to go ahead and finish this off rather than going back and forth continuously. So I've got negative 0.1. I already have the base case up above, so I don't have to do that again. So now I'm going to go to plus 10%. So I just take out the negative in this case. And now you're getting 5,000 times 1 plus 0.1. So that's 110%, right? Or positive 10%. Take it again. Change this to 0.2. And one last time, grab 30%. All right. So at 30%, our Npv is going to be 303,000. Okay. So now let's go up here this is the mechanical part, right? You got to just kind of do this. So at 10%, I'm going to go minus 10%. So you go ahead and fill this in. You don't need me, right? So you're just going to go and you're going to grab the minus 10% NPV. Then you're going to grab the 10% NPV. So this one was the minus 20. Here's the minus 10, right? And then I'm just going to kind of just go through here and fill all this in. I want the plus 10%. The plus 20%. And the plus 30%. Okay, so that's really mechanical, right? This is a beautiful thing because, I mean, look how easy that was. It was like a 5-minute thing. If I wasn't talking at you while I was doing it, I could have done it even faster, right? Because we had built the model the way we did, and it's relational, we just, we're able to do this quick cut and paste. And now we've got how our net present value varies if we hold our assumptions constant and vary our volume. Okay, so we have a sense of how sensitive is our assumptions to a change in volume. Okay, so let's rename this sheet. What do we call it? We'll call it volume. Okay. Now I'm going to make a copy of this sheet. So I'm going to right-click on the tab for the sheet, go up and click Move or Copy. And then I get this window, and I'm going to create a copy, and I'll have it come in before volume. That's fine, doesn't matter. Okay, so is everybody with me? Does everybody have this looking like this? Does anybody not have it looking like this? I don't need everybody to say yes. Anybody not with me? Because I can email you this sheet if you want, if you're just like, if your sheet just kind of is falling apart and you can't keep up. I'd rather just send it to you right now. And you can privately message me if you're having trouble. All right, I'm not seeing any responses. Oh, okay. Do you want me to send it? Or what is it that's off? You're 10% and below? Okay, so let's see. So your negative 10% should be a positive. So let's have a look. It should be 31,000. So does your formula look like this?
Yeah, are we supposed to just like copy and paste the most recent one?
It shouldn't matter which one you choose. So you should be able to just cut and paste, whichever one. They're all designed the same, right? The relationships are all the same. So you should be able to cut and paste any one of them. And then the matter is just copying, changing the value up here in this corner number.
Okay, yeah, now mine looks the same.
Now it's there?
Yeah, thank you.
And is the overall?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If anybody else is not with us, I'd rather you get, I'd rather just send you a copy of the sheet, and we can, so that you're not, just sitting there saying, I have no idea what's going on. Or we can take a quick moment to fix it. And feel free to privately message me if you don't want to tell everybody you're lost. I'm not seeing any responses. Okay, then I'm going to keep going. Okay, so Aaron, before you copy, if you were off before you copy, you want to fix it, because we're going to come back and use this. So now we're going to go to volume, our volume 2 sheet. I'm going to rename that. Let's rename that net rev. So now we have a volume sheet and a net rev sheet. Okay. And I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to change, I'm not going to change any of these references, right? I'm just going to change that, the name from volume to net rev. All right, everybody with me? Scream if you're not. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to tweak the assumptions now. And instead of tweaking volume, which is what we did last time, we're going to tweak net revenue. So we don't have to change the negative 0.3 because what we're going to do now is take 70%, right? 1 minus 0.3 or 1 plus negative 0.3 of 80. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to get rid of, we need to clear what we did to the volume. So we're going to bring the volume back to 5,000. We're going to assume, because remember, sensitivity analysis, we only tweak one thing at a time. Okay? So we're going to bring the volume back to what it was. And now we're going to change our net revenue to equals 80 times 1 plus negative 0.3. Okay, so you should have a formula that looks like that. If you're not with me, shout at me. So I have reset my volume, so you can see, in fact, you can get rid of the equals. I have reset my volume so that it is assuming a volume of 5,000, which was our base case was 5,000. Our base case for revenue was 80. So this time, instead of messing with volume, we're going to mess with net revenue. So down here, right, I have reset my volume to 5,000, and I've now programmed in my net revenue to take a 30% hit. And the result is, of course, my revenues are down, but what's not down is my supplies, right? If I had changed my volume, both my revenues and my supplies would change. Would change. But if I only focus on my net revenue, then just my revenue line is going to change and my supplies are going to stay the same. So you go up here, you can compare, right? Revenue 400, revenue 280, supplies 200, supplies 200, right? So this one's going to take a pretty hard hit, and sure enough, our NPV is negative 307. And if we go over here, right, it's already there because we programmed the relationship on the previous sheet, right? So this saves us time again. So this is pretty cool. Now I'm starting, you know, this is where you get to see, Professor, how geeky I actually am, because I think this is really cool. Okay, so now we've done that, but all these other ones are still haven't been fixed, right? So the thing we're going to do, the beautiful thing about this is we're going to copy the 5,000 and the 56, these two cells B19 and B20, the volume one and the net rev one. And that's all we have to do now is copy and paste that into each one of our set of assumptions. And we don't have to do anything else because everything else is already ready. And that's it. That's all there is to that. And so you go over here and all your stuff is already done. You don't have to do anything to this column other than rename it to net revenue. So now we've got two sets of comparisons about the sensitivity of this model, right, to to changes in net revenue versus changes in volume. So changes in volume would be just kind of like, hey, how accurate, you know, how sensitive is our profitability to our assumptions about our volume. The net revenue sheet now says, we're going to hold volume constant. We're going to assume we're right about that. And we're going to deal with questions of how sensitive is our model, our business case, to possible changes in how much we're able to bill per visit. And so you change that over here. So now we've got two versions, right? I want you to go ahead and do a third version, and I'm going to give you a minute to do it, or at least to get started on it. And what do we want to do? Let's see what the impact is if well, let's see what the impact is if how sensitive we are to changes in supplies. Okay, so you're going to build another sheet just like we did just now for net revenue, but you're going to program it in for changes in supplies. Okay, so I'm going to give you a second to work on that, and then I'll jump in. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and then I'll get started on it. Let me know if you have a question. So we're gonna create a new sheet for supplies. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter, Kat. Either one is fine because they're all set up the same. Both are set up the same, I should say.
Could you show on your screen the net revenues with the percent changes, like at the top corner?
Hold on. Can you say that again?
Yeah, sorry. Could you just scroll up or scroll over actually to show the changes that you got in the little chart that you made?
This here?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
This is one of the great things about Excel is if you learn how to use it properly, it can really save you a lot of time, right? So building the model properly takes a little more time on the front end, but if you build it properly, hopefully what you're seeing is if you build it properly, you can modify it very quickly. And that's what's great about Excel in particular is you can run all these different variations on a well-built model. You can very quickly modify the model to reflect changes. So there's you work with Excel long enough and you start to come to kind of appreciate an elegant an elegant spreadsheet, which maybe sounds a bit crazy, but you'll get there. All right, I've given you about 4 minutes, so keep working if you're good and you're comfortable with it. I'm going to go ahead and start doing it myself, okay? So we're going to modify supplies. So the first thing I'm going to do is I can work with either one of these. I'm just going to copy it. So move or copy. Then I'm going to tell it to create a copy. I'm going to stick it in here. I'm going to rename it supplies. Right. And so now this is the supplies sheet. I'm going to go over here and change the title of the column, supplies. And so what do I need to do? Well, I need to reset this column over here. So volume is good. Net revenue, I'm going to set back to 80. And I mean, I can get rid of the equals. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to make any difference. I can do it to be more formal. So equals 40, right? So this is my supplies now, times 1 plus negative 0.3 will give me 70% of my supplies. So the supply cost goes down, and as you would expect, our NPV goes up, right? So now all I need to do, I'm going to go ahead and copy all three just because it's easier for me to kind of orient, but it really doesn't matter. All you need to do is copy, really, you need to copy net revenue and supplies. But I'm going to copy volume, net revenue, supplies because it's faster for me to orient and it probably make fewer mistakes. So I just go down and paste that in. So, you know, a couple of keystrokes and I'm done. So as I go down, it's replacing, it's fixing net revenue back to 80, and then it's modifying supplies. Now, a increase in supplies is not necessarily a good thing, right? Or it isn't a good thing because it's going to drive down my costs. We need to look at this, and we'll talk about it in a second, what we might want to do with this. So in this case, if our when our supplies are down by 30%, our NPV actually goes up, right? Because our costs are going down, right? And then when our costs go up, our NPV goes down. Whereas in the other two, right, when either net revenue, the assumed net revenue per visit was up or volume was up, right? We saw it go, you know, we saw our NPV going up. So now you say, well, what do you do with this? Well, one thing you could do with it is make a visualization of what this actually looks like. So that'll be our next thing to do. Is everybody with me? Does anybody not have 3 sheets right now with results that look like this? For some reason yours are switched how? For the supplies one? Okay, so let's go back over here. You have, what did you type in here? Did you type 1 minus as opposed to 1 plus? That will do it. Okay, there you go. Okay. So now we've got 3 sheets with some data on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to just insert a brand new sheet. So I'm going to go over here to that plus sign at the bottom. That'll create a new sheet. So there's a blank. We can put it on the end. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I'm going to stick it on the end. And we'll call it sensitivity. Sensitivity. No, I think that's right. I'm a terrible speller. I don't have if I don't have Word doing it for me. Okay. And what I'm going to do is just say pick a spot. It doesn't matter a whole lot. And I'm going to say, well, I'll just go to the front corner here. I guess that'll work better. So in A1, I'm going to hit equals, and I'm just going to go to supplies. And I am going to click here in this empty cell, like so. And now I'm going to copy that down. I think 7 will do it. No, 9 will do it. There we go. And then I can copy it over one column. And I've got all my data from my supplies sheet. So I don't have to do any typing. I'm just going to change this, neaten it up a little bit, give it a column, comma, and I don't care about the cents. I'm going to delete that 0. And then I'm going to format these back to percentages again. But again, you know, none of those are wrong. It just looks nicer if you like that. Anybody not able to do that? So all I did was I clicked in cell A1 in the corner and I said equals. Then I went to the supplies sheet and I made it equal to this empty cell right here, because what I knew I wanted to do was copy this whole area. And I need me to do it again.
Could you do that one more time?
Yes, I can. All right, I will just wipe it out and do it again. All right, I've got a new sheet that I've titled sensitivity. I'm going to click in that upper corner A1. I'm going to just type equals, and then I'm going to go to the supplies sheet. And I'm basically telling it, I'm just copying data over. So I'm going to choose that cell right there. Okay. Now that cell is just kind of, it's an empty cell, but I'm trying to get I'm trying to get it the relationship. Now I'm going to copy that down. There we go. So I came in, right? I said equals, and it's supplies exclamation point is telling Excel, go to the supplies sheet and grab cell L2. Okay. So if you're there, then you can just copy down, I think it's down to cell 9. And this is pulling, you can see supplies, see it says supplies L4. It's pulling that whole column from the supplies sheet. I can delete that 0. Well, let's not delete that 0. So if I highlight the whole column so far, what I know is over on my supplies sheet, I've got my outcomes for supplies right there. So if I just pull that over, it now reaches back to the supplies sheet and grabs me M4. And then this one grabs me M5, right? So it's grabbing me that whole column. So I don't have to do any new typing. I just copy it in. All right, and then I don't really want it to be in percent form, so I use this comma, and then I'm gonna reduce the number of zeros by using this decreased decimal function here. Okay, and then over here, I'm gonna format that into percent. Okay, so now I've got my data from my supplies sheet, and now I would like to get my data from my other two sheets. So I'm going to type equals, and I'm going to go to NetRev, and I'm going to click on NetRev, and then hit return. And notice it copied in my NetRev, the word NetRev, and it's referencing sheet NetRev and M3. So now I can just copy down, and it's pulling over from NetRev all of my data, so I don't have to do any typing again. And then finally, I'm going to do the same thing for the volume. So equals volume, hit enter, and then I copy that down. And now I have all the data there. I'm just going to format it to make it look nice, because we always want to look nice. So there we go. Now we have a comparison of 3 of our variables in our model and their respective effects on the profitability of the model as measured by NPV. Okay. Anybody not with me? Anybody not have this sheet set up like this? And again, if you're shy, you can privately message me. Probably easier for you if you just jump on and shout it out. Because chances are, if you're messed up, somebody else is messed up. All right, everybody's there then, I'm assuming. So, what now? What now? What now? Well, what now is we're going to graph this thing, right? So we're going to highlight. Oh, and let's get rid of that 0. That's obnoxious. So we're going to highlight the whole set of data, and we're going to go to Insert, and we're going to select line chart, and we'll select this first one. Okay. And we've got this set of data. So first of all, we don't really want to graph the column A. So let's go ahead and get rid of column A. So I click on the blue line, and you notice all of the rest of the lines are not selected. So I've got the data points for the column A are selected, and all I'm going to do is hit the delete button, and it's going to go away. Okay. So now I have a graph or a chart with lines representing each of my 3 variables: supplies, net revenue, and volume. Now, to make this look a little nicer, I want to bring the data from my change column A, in to be my x-axis data. So I'm going to go over here, kind of put my cursor over the graph, but not on any particular thing. And I'm going to right click, and it brings up this window. All right, so everybody with me? Was everybody able to delete the blue line? Anybody not able to do that? Anybody just like delete everything by accident? I need to start over? No big deal, and it takes a second. You guys have done some of this in maybe in research? Have you made graphs in research? Yes, okay, so this is not new. Okay. All right, good. So then so I can reasonably expect you to be able to do this. All right. So I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to go to select data. Okay, right in the middle. So all I do is I right click. It brings up some options. I'm going to select data. Okay. And right now, the horizontal category axis labels, right, are just arbitrary 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for the 7 data points. So we want to get rid of those and give them our actual labels. Sorry. So what I want to do is I'm going to put my cursor on top of where it says edit over here on the horizontal category axis labels. Right, over here where it says edit, I'm going to click on edit, and it says axis label range. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to leave out change. I'm going to start at -30 and drag down to +30. Okay, and it's already inserted, so now you can just say OK, and then OK again. And so we have a nice looking chart. And we can rename this, call it sensitivity. So now we have 3 graphs of 3 of our variables and how sensitive the overall outcome is, the NPV is to changes in any one of these variables. Let's focus. I'm going to just go ahead and you don't have to do this right now. I'm going to go ahead and just drop the supplies for a moment. Or you can go ahead and get rid of supplies just because it's and we'll add it. We can add it back quite easily, so it's no big deal. You don't have to, but so graphical analysis of sensitivity analysis. You're looking at this chart, so this could be a question. You know, what does a chart like this tell you? If you're looking at this, if you're just looking at this chart without any underlying data, you know, without any more data than what you've got from the chart, which variable affects the model more profoundly? Is it volume or net revenue, and why? Or how do you know? Not why, but how do you know? Right. Good. So a couple of responses. It's net revenue is more sensitive to changes. The model is more sensitive to changes in net revenue than it is to changes in volume, right? And you know that because the net revenue is steeper than the volume line, right? So for a change, you know, for a 30% change in volume, you're down 100,000, but for a 30% change in net revenue, revenue per, right, you're down 300,000, right? It crosses at the base, right, because here, you know, all the assumptions are the same, and then, you know, again, net revenue, when net revenue is up by 30%, your overall outcome is up by 500 as opposed to being up by 300. So the steepness of the curve tells you how sensitive you are. So what do we do with the supplies? So I can add that back now, and you can just drag over, and there's supplies back, and so it's, you know, it's going down instead of up. So one option would be, you know, we just invert this, you know, and put 104 up on top and 303 on the bottom. We could take time to do that. One way we could do that real quick is we can break the references. We'll have to break the references, or we'd have to do a fair amount of cutting and pasting to do it. But what I'd like to do is have it slope up instead of down, right? So we can kind of compare. The thing we'd have to remember is, you know, we've inverted it. So we could do that. One way we could do that is we could highlight this, copy it, and I'm going to paste it in. Hard code it is how I call it. I'm going to hard code it in, which means I'm going to paste the values in. So that's going to break all the references. It's easy enough to replace it. So I selected the whole, the NPV column. Now I'm right clicking and getting the, you know, the options, and I'm going to choose that, choose to paste values. And nothing appears to have happened, but notice when I click on it, there's a number there, not an equals supplies sheet L whatever, right? And now I could, in order to get it reversed, I can sort it. So I go to data and sort. No, I want to just continue with that selection. And then I want to sort it. No, I don't want to do that. Let's see. A to Z. Did the whole darn thing. I didn't test this before I got with you guys. It should be, I should be able to do it without messing with the whole graph. Let me see. Why isn't it letting me? Because that's the, when it asks to expand, I'm telling it no. Continue with current selection. Okay. Okay. There we go. Where'd my thing go? All right, I thought I was going to be able to
think it's the same line as the volume one, so it's just underneath it.
Was it identical? Okay. All right. So it has, that's interesting and accidental. I didn't realize it was going to have the exact same impact. Thanks. Good observation. I didn't realize that. All right. So my clever approach isn't all that interesting after all. Okay. So anyway, what would make that, you know, so if you're presented and you want to make a visual comparison, you know, where you have a decreasing, you might need to, you know, flip it to present it, but you'd want to make sure that anybody looking at it knew that you had inverted the values and your goal was just to get at the slope, right? So we can just kind of undo that. Yeah, one more. There we go. All right. So that's sensitivity analysis. So the usefulness to this is not, so a point I want to make is you would do this kind of at an early stage of analysis, okay? So you're building a project and you're like, all right, I'm making all these assumptions, you know, and assumptions that aren't going to have very much impact, you're not going to worry a whole lot about. Assumptions that are going to have a big impact, you're going to worry more about. I picked all stuff that's going to have a big impact, but if we were to go back over here and pick something like, you know, do a sheet for salvage value, for example, right? And we were going to do, you know, plus or minus 30% on salvage value. That would have a really tiny impact on it would have a really tiny impact on the net present value, right? Because it's only 25,000 relative to, you know, even relative to the overall net cash flow for the year. So even if that was 30% greater, so what would that be like? An extra 8,000, right? An extra 8,000 just wouldn't have that much impact on the overall NPV. So we could mostly ignore salvage value if we were building a model. Like this was a, you know, we were thinking about this as an investment. We could pretty much ignore salvage value. You know, we could do that real quick, I guess. I'll do it. You can follow along if you'd like. So I will create a copy just so we could demonstrate this. So salvage, right? And then I'll change this over here to salvage. And I'm going to now make my assumption instead of supplies. I'm going to make my assumption about salvage. And I can just copy this whole thing fast. So this is how beautiful it is. It takes 2 seconds to program in an assumption, change in assumptions. All right, so now I have the impact of salvage, and you can see very little effect, right? Base case is 99, the worst case is 94, the best, best case is 104. So if we add that to our sensitivity analysis, and we do equals salvage, copy it down, and then just extend our graph to include it. Right, salvage is that orange line right there, and it's such a small impact that you can barely see that it starts just below 100 and it goes to just above 100. So if you were modeling this and you were saying, which of the variables do we need to pay careful attention to? One of them would not be salvage value, right? Salvage would be, we can afford to be wrong on salvage value by quite a bit. Which one would we want to pay a lot of attention to? We'd want to pay a lot of attention to our revenue assumptions. We'd want to pay a lot of attention to our volume assumptions. We'd want to pay a lot of attention to our supply costs, which all makes sense, right? Those are major moving parts to our organization. So we'd want to be thinking about that. So, so that's sensitivity analysis. Again, you're not necessarily going to assume that you're going to have a 30% change in any one of these things, either plus or minus. But what you want to do is you want to look at it to pick out the which variables you're going to pay closer attention to when you move on to your next step in the analysis, which is the scenario analysis, which we will do next time because we don't have time to get into it. Okay, so so that's sensitivity analysis, right? So this is a first step. First step is you build your model, you take your assumptions. Second step is you see which of these variables have the most significant impact on our model and our assumptions. So which assumptions do we have to really be sure we're getting right? And which assumptions do we have to pay the most attention to? And so some things are going to be able to be pretty much like, doesn't have, even if we're really wrong, salvage value doesn't have that much of an impact on our decision. But if we're really wrong about our revenue assumptions, then our model is going to be way off. All right. So next time we'll come back. So we'll skip. So okay. Well, so next time when we meet to talk about chapter 15, we will move on to scenario analysis. Any questions about what we've done with sensitivity analysis? All right, I'm not hearing anybody and I'm not seeing anything. All right, so that is the material for today. So let me stop the recording.